Freddie Starr spent more than 50 years making Britain laugh, and the country loved him for every minute of it. But the man who walked off stage when the applause died down was someone his own daughter barely recognized as the same person. Tara Coleman Starr has spoken candidly about what it felt like to grow up in the shadow of a comedian the public treated like a national treasure, and the picture she described had nothing to do with punchlines or slapstick. What she put into words was a man who split himself cleanly into two separate versions, one for the cameras and the adoring audiences beyond them, and another for the people who actually shared his life. That gap between what the public saw and what the family endured is where the real story of Freddie Starr begins. Born on January 9, 1943, on Ulster Road in Liverpool, Freddie came into the world alongside a twin brother who didn't survive the birth. That loss settled into the household before Freddie was old enough to understand it, adding a layer of grief to a family already stretched thin. His father was a bricklayer by trade and a bare-knuckle boxer by history, and the combination of physical violence and heavy drinking made home a dangerous place. During Freddie's early years, his father broke both of his legs. After that, Freddie stopped talking altogether, withdrawing into a silence that lasted long enough to alarm everyone around him. And by the time he was 6, the silence had hardened into something the family couldn't manage on their own. He was placed in care, separated from his mother Hilda, from his 6 siblings, and from whatever stability the household had managed to offer, for 2 full years. The family had relocated from Liverpool to Huyton when Freddie was 4, seeking something better. And what they found was the same financial pressure wearing a different address. Hilda was German by origin and Jewish by descent, and she saw potential in her son that the circumstances of their life did nothing to make obvious. She pushed him toward performance from the age of 12, and Freddie responded with an intensity that made complete sense once you understood what he'd already been through. Performing was, in a very practical way, the one thing he could do that the chaos of his early years couldn't take from him. He worked pubs and clubs across the region, joined the Hilda Fallon Roadshow, and spent 5 years bringing live entertainment to community halls and hospitals, learning his craft in front of audiences who expected to be genuinely entertained and had paid very little for the privilege. His father died during his early teenage years, closing one chapter of suffering without erasing what it had already produced, and Freddie pressed forward with his career rather than retreating toward the family that had struggled to hold on to him. His first film credit came in 1958 with Violent Playground, a debut that arrived when he was still in his teens. By 1961, he'd joined a group called Derry and the Seniors and spent a significant stretch performing in Germany alongside them. And that group made history as the first Liverpool beat group to record and release a full LP, achieving that milestone in 1962. When Derry and the Seniors dissolved toward the end of that year, Freddie took the lead vocalist position with a Mersey beat ensemble called the Midnighters, and the move brought him under the direct management of Brian Epstein. Working with the producer Joe Meek, the group released 3 singles, none of which made any impression on the charts. But the period gave Freddie something more useful than chart success. Specifically, regular time on the stages of Hamburg's nightclubs alongside acts like the Beatles, who were still working out who they were about to become. Recognition arrived properly in 1967, when Freddie appeared on Opportunity Knocks as part of an ensemble billed as Freddie Starr and the Delmont. Audiences connected with him immediately, and he won the popular vote across 6 consecutive performances, which wasn't a small thing in a format built around competition. By 1970, he was performing at the Royal Variety Show, delivering impersonations of Cliff Richard, Tom Jones, and Mick Jagger to an audience that included the royal family, and his portrayal of Adolf Hitler in Wellington boots lodged itself permanently in British cultural memory, in the way only truly absurdist comedy can. Elvis Presley and Ray Charles also fell within his mimicry range, giving him a breadth that few performers could match. His musical output produced several albums, and in March of 1974, he achieved a UK top 10 single with It's You. with two later albums, After the Laughter in 1989 and The Wanderer in 1990, both charting as well, making it clear he was a genuine entertainer rather than simply a comedian who happened to carry a tune. Television became the primary platform from 1972 onward, first as one of the main performers on the popular series Who Do You Do?, then as a familiar face on the panel show Joker's Wild. A series titled Freddie Starr launched in 1974, but survived only a single special after conflicts with the production team at London Weekend Television brought it to an early halt. A BBC series followed in 1976, and the format gave him room to work in the broad punchlines and physical slapstick that played to his strengths. But privately, something was already pulling at him in ways the television appearances couldn't disguise forever. Starting in 1974, Freddie developed a dependency on Valium that continued for 2 full decades. And Michael Parkinson, who hosted some of the most watched interview programs in British television during those years, later stated directly that the addiction had diminished a level of talent that very few entertainers ever reach. What audiences saw was a version of Freddie Starr shaped and sometimes limited by something they were never told about. On March 13, 1986, The Sun published a front page that would outlast almost everything else Freddie Starr ever did. The headline read, "Freddie Starr ate my hamster," and the story attached to it described a night at the home of his friend Vince McCaffrey, whose girlfriend Lal kept a pet hamster called Super Sonic in Birchwood, Cheshire. According to the account, Freddie had returned from a late performance in Manchester, demanded something to eat, been turned down, and responded by placing the hamster between 2 slices of bread. The story spread everywhere and stuck to him with a tenacity that no amount of denial could shake. In his 2001 autobiography, Unwrapped, Freddie addressed it directly and without ambiguity, stating that he had never eaten or nibbled any small mammal, that he had stayed at McCaffrey's house only once, and that was back in 1979, and that the entire incident was a fabrication. The man behind the fabrication was Max Clifford, Freddie's publicist at the time, who invented the story as a practical joke and had no expectation of how far it would travel. What nobody anticipated was the commercial result. Ticket sales for Freddie's upcoming tour had been sluggish before the headline appeared, and in the aftermath, 12 extra dates were added to the schedule, while his fee reportedly increased by £1 million. When Esther Ranson later asked him on television whether any of it was true, Freddie dismissed the suggestion without breaking stride. Clifford asked the same question repeatedly in subsequent years, remained entirely unapologetic, arguing the fabrication had done more for Freddie's profile than any genuine achievement ever had. In May of 2006, the BBC named it one of the most iconic British newspaper headlines of the century, ensuring it would never stop following him. And by the end, Freddie had grown visibly weary of the association, telling one newspaper he'd reveal the truth for £1 before taking the money and refusing to say anything further. His television presence kept building through the 90s, with shows bearing his name airing from 1993 to 1994, and again from 1996 to 1998, both produced by Central. During a 1996 LWT special titled An Audience with Freddie Starr, he threw handfuls of live maggots into the seated audience, and the 1997 follow-up featured him driving eggs into the crowd with a golf club. He also owned a racehorse during this period, and that horse won the 1994 Grand National while Freddie was absent, prior television commitments having kept him away from the event. The post-race interview happened live on television via mobile phone, with presenter Des Lynam serving as the audible half of a conversation that viewers on the receiving end could only partially hear, which turned the moment into something both comic and oddly characteristic of Freddie's relationship with spectacle. In March of 2009, he appeared on a reality program called Living with the Dead, claiming his 1930s home was occupied by a malevolent entity he called George, and during the episode it emerged that the entity's name was actually Roger, adding one more layer of strange to an already strange situation. April 2010 brought a severe heart attack, requiring emergency quadruple bypass surgery, canceling a planned tour that was eventually rescheduled for 2011 once he recovered enough. That same year, he joined the cast of I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here, before being forced to withdraw when his health declined again. His final tour in 2015 included a well-received performance at the Royal Hippodrome Theatre in Eastbourne, and his last stage appearance took place at the Prince's Theatre in Clacton-on-Sea, closing a career that had run for more than 5 decades. Offstage, he had supported Everton FC with genuine passion and maintained a vegetarian lifestyle since his teenage years. On the morning of the 1984 FA Cup final, he appeared outside the Everton team's hotel and performed an impromptu comedy set for the players, and they went on to beat Watford 2-0. April 1994 produced a far more uncomfortable kind of story when his gardener, Robin Coxhead, was charged with stealing £41,000 worth of jewelry from his home. Coxhead alleged in court that the jewelry had been given to him as compensation for sexual acts with Freddie over a 5-year period, and that allegation collapsed when Coxhead proved unable to provide basic identifying details. He was convicted and sentenced to 15 months in prison in 1995. The more serious legal difficulties came later. On October 8, 2012, Channel 4 News aired allegations connecting Freddie to Jimmy Savile's BBC program Clunk Click, which he had appeared on in 1974, and his legal representatives denied everything. On November 1, 2012, as part of Operation U-Tree, police arrested him at his home in Warwickshire. Further arrests followed in connection with separate matters, and he denied each allegation consistently. On May 6, 2014, the Crown Prosecution Service confirmed that no charges would be brought, citing insufficient evidence. A libel and slander claim he subsequently filed against the woman who had made the original allegations was dismissed by the High Court on July 10, 2015. The court finding her account credible, while ruling that the time elapsed made proceeding with the case impossible. Tara Coleman Starr, who had appeared in the BBC soap Doctors during her years as a child actress, later described her father in terms that had nothing to do with comedy. "Two different people," she said. The performer audiences knew was gifted and impossible not to watch. The man at home was manipulative and violent, reacting to her mother Trudy's pregnancy in ways Tara found impossible to excuse, and behaving privately with a selfishness the public persona never even hinted at. His wife, Sophie Lee, whose marriage to Freddie ended in 2015, corroborated much of the same account, describing physical and emotional abuse, periods in which she harmed herself, and thoughts of suicide that had grown serious enough to frighten her before she found a way through. Freddie left Britain for Spain that same year, driven in part by the mounting legal costs of defending himself that had depleted whatever financial resources he had left. In Spain, he occupied a modest one-bedroom flat and kept largely to himself, far from the television stages and packed tour venues that had defined decades of his working life. His final public appearance came in 2017 at a karaoke bar in Fuengirola, and when the footage circulated online, the response was distressing enough that he retreated from public view entirely. His carer Nellie found him unresponsive on the floor of their apartment in May of 2019, having apparently been in good spirits and playing with his cat just before she stepped out. He was 76 years old. A post-mortem conducted in Malaga confirmed heart failure as the cause. At the time of his death, he owed approximately £3,500 in unpaid bills at the complex where he lived, and Sophie Lee stepped in to organize his funeral, motivated by the belief that his children deserved the chance to say goodbye. Tributes came quickly from across the world of British entertainment. Jim Davidson acknowledged his greatness. Amanda Holden reflected on the enormous scale of fame he had once occupied and urged people not to allow shifting comedic tastes to diminish what he had genuinely achieved. Roy Chubby Brown mourned the loss of a close friend and fellow comedy legend. Jess Conrad described him as a master whose unpredictability had been his defining quality and whose humor had shaped generations of fans, who would carry those memories forward regardless of how his later years had unfolded. After his death, a woman named Jo Bellum, 44 years old at the time, came forward claiming Freddie was her biological father. Her mother had shared the story on Joe's 16th birthday, explaining that she and Freddie had a relationship during the early 1970s while he was performing in Bournemouth, meeting regularly at his Westbourne residence whenever the tour schedule brought him there. Joe's mother died at the age of 70 in 2017, leaving the question unresolved and the window for a clear answer narrowing with every year. Joe was explicit that financial gain played no part in her request, that concerns about hereditary illness and her children's medical history were what had driven her to search for answers. She had made repeated attempts to reach Freddie's management and surviving relatives without success, and with him now gone, the only path remaining was through the cooperation of a family he had long been estranged from. What she wanted, she made plain, was not inheritance or recognition or any claim on a legacy. She simply wanted to know who she was.